This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. A 2-year-old boy is still dealing with a painful reminder of his visit to the hospital. Last week, his mom took him to the emergency room for a problem with his collarbone. But an IV with medication put in his arm to help left him worse off and fighting an infection. CBC's Zubina Ahmed reports.
Well, his bandage, it starts blistering from up here.
His arm was not the problem. When Trilina Francois took her 2-year-old son, Logan, to Children's Hospital. They went to emergency last week for a growing cyst on his collarbone. He was admitted and given antibiotics by intravenous.
I'm terrified to take my kids back there. Or now I know to make sure I got to watch them good when they're over there. That's how his arm first started looking.
Francois says the nurses had trouble finding a vein, and it took them 3 tries before inserting the IV at the center of his arm. She says Logan kept waking up through the night, crying, and by 6 in the morning she knew he was in pain.
He screamed when I tried to pick him up. And I was like, why is he doing that? I was wondering what's going on. So I started looking through his whole body and I noticed his arm was big and inflated.
Francois says when the nurses removed the IV tape, his skin peeled off. She says the surgeon assessed his arm and said he could lost it if she hadn't noticed.
It was bad. It was purple.
Logan is now on antibiotics and painkillers. Francois says she's disappointed with her child's care and is looking for answers about how this happened. She plans on hiring a lawyer.
I want the nurses that did it responsible for it, because who knows what it could have. They can do it to another kid. They can do it to anybody else.
Shared Health told CBC in a statement that the incident is being investigated and the Patient Relations Office has reached out to the family to discuss their experience. Zubina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
People living in a troubled downtown hotel have been ordered out and forced to find a new place to live, which for many is no easy task. City of Winnipeg officials have raised safety concerns about the Manwin Hotel for years. CBC's Cameron McLean reports one homeless advocate says kicking people out will only make matters worse.
Akeem Kambamba owns the Manwin Hotel. He knows the building needs work.
We're working on it.
Earlier this month, the city ordered the 34 people living in the hotel to vacate. But Kambamba says many of them came back.
Everybody was evicted, and then 20 of them came back because they had nowhere else to go. They kept insisting they have to come back. So I let most of them stay.
Kambamba says firefighters responding to a fire in a suite last month found this back fire escape did not meet safety standards. Inspectors also cited multiple ongoing maintenance issues in the building. The owner says he's working on fixing the problems, but doesn't have the money right now.
It's not 100% perfect, but people can live here. And the city should be reasonable to allow not to kick people out in minus 40-degree weather.
The Manwin Hotel has faced criticism from people living in the area over poor living conditions and problems with violence. Despite those concerns, residents have told CBC News they have nowhere else to go. Marion Willis with St. Boniface Street Links agrees the Manwin needs a lot of work, but worries forcing people out will create more problems.
Property bylaws tells me it's about life safety issues. The building isn't safe. Well, you don't fix one life safety issue by creating another. There's all kinds of life safety issues attached to putting people outside. Where do you think these folks are going?
Kambamba says the fire escape will cost about $80,000 to replace and thousands more for other repairs. Whether or not the building can be fixed, Willis doesn't think evicting people will solve the problems. A city spokesperson says it has been working with the Manwin Hotel owner for years to fix outstanding problems. It ordered the tenants out of the building to try to encourage the owner to fix multiple issues. The owner has appealed, and a hearing is set for February 10th. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba's second largest city is getting millions of dollars more for policing in hopes of cracking down on retail theft. It's a problem business owners in Brandon say has gotten exponentially worse in the last few years. The Aurora TV and radio repair shop has been in Brandon for 60 years, but its manager says theft has spiked in the last 5. While officers do checks of the area, it hasn't stopped people from stealing. He wants to see convicted thieves pay back businesses, but also says there are root problems that still need to be addressed.
It's an overall deal. It's not just a matter of seeking justice. It's a matter of let's eliminate the problem from the source. Is it drugs? Is it homelessness? What's causing this? How can we help?
Well, the majority of the extra $9 million in funding will go to boosting police presence. $85,000 is being directed to extend the retail theft program. Since it began last year, 70 people have been arrested. A Manitoba cabinet minister who died last week is being remembered for his passion for teaching and dedication to reconciliation. Nello Altomare was the province's education minister at the time of his death. Today, family and friends said their final goodbyes to the 61-year-old. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, he's leaving behind a lasting legacy.
Nello Altomare is remembered as a man who lived and advanced reconciliation. His celebration of life featured First Nation singers and dancers, leading Altomare's casket ahead of his family. Around 1,000 people packed a room at Transcona Country Club to pay their respects to the late education minister. Premier Wab Kinew remembered Altomare for always wearing an Every Child Matters pin.
He wore this pin because it represents the belief that animated Nello's life, the belief that every child matters.
The Transcona MLA died last week. He was diagnosed with stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer shortly after he was first elected in 2019. Fellow MLA and Families Minister Nahanni Fontaine says Altomare was known for his love, respect, and support of Indigenous people. Natural Resources and Indigenous Futures Minister Ian Bushy spoke about gifting Altomare with a star blanket.
The star blanket gives a sense of comfort to not only the person wrapped within it, but also to your family as a symbol of our love.
Friend Jason Drysdale remembered Altomare as a dedicated husband and father. Before politics, Altomare was a teacher and principal and spent much of his time in the River East Transcona School Division. He was remembered for bringing steel-cut oats to students at one of his schools so they wouldn't have to learn on an empty stomach.
This was the seed that blossomed under his leadership into the Universal School Nutrition Program. Nello has made a huge impact on all schools across our province. Nello faced his challenges with courage and humility. Nello, this is not goodbye. We will see you later. Love you, my friend.
A passionate educator who came out of retirement to get into politics, Nello Altomare was 61 years old. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Friday's blizzard wreaked havoc on Manitoba roads and left hundreds of people filing insurance claims. Manitoba Public Insurance says there have been 725 damage claims filed as of this morning. That number could still increase. The Crown Corp received more than 500 claims the first day alone, and they say it takes many weeks before everyone submits theirs. On Friday, highways across southern Manitoba were closed after a blizzard produced whiteout conditions. MPI couldn't say if the number of claims is unprecedented for one storm, but they described it as catastrophic. Weather specialist Riley Lachuk in now. Riley, we know Friday was dangerous. It had a lot of people stuck and stranded, and there is still more snow on the way.
A little bit of snow, another dusting coming our way, Brittany. We are looking at a light at the end of the tunnel. We'll go into detail in your long-range forecast. Look at some of our temperatures down to -20 in Winnipeg, -19 late this afternoon, almost 10 degrees colder than where we started at midnight overnight last night. -16 in Brandon right now, Thompson -21, Churchill at -24 at the moment. High pressure has cleared us out quite considerably, really right across the province into northwestern Ontario. A bit of cloud hanging around on the western edge of the province. That's the leading edge of the next weather maker that'll come our way as we get into the next couple of days here. Again, not really bringing us much other than a dusting, and behind that some much warmer air. So down to -26 tonight, mostly clear in Winnipeg. We start at -25. And then as we get into the afternoon, Brittany, we start our warm-up, which will last until we get into the weekend. I'll have more on that coming up.
Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, the nights may be long and dark, but one Winnipeg neighborhood just got a little bit brighter. The third annual Lights on the Exchange Festival has returned for its third year. The event features 25 light-based works of art that people can check out as they walk the streets of the Exchange.
We saw this as an opportunity not only to bring some life and some art into the darkest time of the year, but also, you know, the Exchange District is well known for its heritage buildings, its historical architecture. And we thought this was a time to let artists kind of produce stuff in that context.
The festival runs until March 21st. It's a national mentor-based hockey organization that helps marginalized youth through sport. Now they're paying tribute to one of their own. More on that after the break. A young hockey coach is being honored for his work. Trey Basarowicz was just 16 when he was killed last fall. His teammates say his spirit is with them on and off the ice. CBC's Felicia Adam has more.
Go! 9 taps for a fallen teammate. Trey Basarowicz wore the number 9 on his jersey. The 16-year-old died last October after being shot on Boyd Avenue.
Trey was such a great individual and had a great spirit and was here to every week.
Jordan Curtin led the tribute on the ice. She and Trey joined Heroes Hockey Education Reaching Out Society the same year. She says he was a hero on and off the ice and her best friend. They both wore the number 9.
If I'm on the ice and wearing her number, I know he's skating with me. And that always gives me a push, makes me want to do better.
Skate like lightning today.
Across Canada, over 800 Heroes players are honoring Trey. Hoodies with the letter T in a red heart on the sleeve and the words "bigger than hockey" right below. The nationwide tribute, something Ashley Basarowicz knows her son would have been thrilled to see.
I honestly didn't realize how much of an effect he had with Hockey Heroes and just what he was doing. It just makes me feel very proud as a parent.
Basarowicz remembers her son as a kind soul, someone who could make anyone feel loved and seen. Soon after joining the program, Trey became one of the youngest coaches for Heroes.
He just had a passion for hockey in general and just skating. Like, he loved being on the ice all the time, so he just always wanted to teach kids. They all thought he was so great and so good, and so he wanted to teach them just how to be the same as him or better.
Kevin Hodgson is the executive director for Heroes. He wants Trey to be remembered for what he did for other people rather than the violence that took him away.
Trey was defined by so much more and so many people that he mattered to, and that he was making our world here at the rink a better place, but he was making our kids' world a better place, and he was making the community a better place. And so we need to celebrate that.
Hodgson says Trey's spirit will continue on the ice through Heroes and off the ice.
There you go. You did it.
Through the many lives he touched. Felicia Adam, CBC News, Winnipeg.
An ecological corridor project along a western Manitoba river is no longer going ahead. The watershed district that got federal funding for the program has declined the grant over escalating concern and opposition in the area. As the CBC's Rosanna Hempel reports, one advocate calls it a missed opportunity.
This is the Little Saskatchewan River in western Manitoba. It's where an ecological corridor project was planned, until concerns from some municipalities and landowners drove the local watershed district to turn down nearly $1 million from Parks Canada. According to a statement, the Assiniboine West Watershed District declined the project due to extreme opposition. Parks Canada describes ecological corridors as areas that connect and improve animal habitats. They aren't conserved or protected areas managed by Parks Canada, but rather locally run projects that communities and landowners can participate in voluntarily. The federal government announced money for an ecological corridor along the Little Saskatchewan River in November. This river flows from Riding Mountain National Park south through Minnedosa and Rapid City before joining the Assiniboine River west of Brandon. The Manitoba Wildlife Federation opposed the plan, saying it heard concerns about what the project would mean for landowners. Opposition started even before the official announcement.
I just think it's a communication breakdown. And
Rob Olson says at the center of those concerns was a lack of consultation with landowners and a lack of clarity and information over how the project would affect farming, fishing, and hunting on Crown land and private property.
It was really kind of an awful process and a terrible outcome because people in the local community were kind of pitted against each other and they were embattled and concerned and mad and upset. To me, it's tragic because we don't have time to lose with conservation.
Former Manitoba MLA John Gerard, though, who's been an advocate for the project, says he's disappointed, calling it a missed opportunity.
There was a lot of, sadly, misinformation, and it may be that it was the fault of Parks Canada or maybe me or the Assiniboine West Watershed District didn't do as good a job as we should have done in explaining.
Most parties agree, though, that a different approach will be needed going forward for conservation and to rebuild trust. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A beautiful shot of sunflowers to end that story. Something that feels so far and distant away right now.
Hopeful. Just think hopeful.
Just a few more months.
Yeah. Could be worse.
It always could, can't it?
I will note, I dug up a little bit of stats today. On this day in 1966, Winnipeg had 64 centimeters of snow on the ground.
So it could be a lot worse.
Yeah, could be a lot colder as well. I have a couple more stats I want to start with to show you here. So today we got to minus 12.5 degrees. This was at midnight. That's when we reached our daytime high for today. Since then, we've started to slowly slide to where we are now at the low temperature of the day at just under minus 20 degrees in Winnipeg at the moment. And we'll continue to see that temperature falling as we get through the evening hours. Tonight, our sunrise back at 8:15, sun setting at 5:07, and that record low also file under that it could be worse category, minus 42 back in 1886. So just a couple of stats to put things into perspective, because I know it feels cold. It is a little bit colder than seasonal for this time of the year, but things will get better as we get toward the weekend here. So here is what's left of some of that flurry activity that made it our way through the day yesterday. Behind that, some clearing. We get another day where we get a mainly sunny sky in Manitoba tomorrow. Another cold night tonight. Another below seasonal day tomorrow, but then we start to change our pattern around a little bit, and I'll show you why here. So as we advance through Thursday, as we get later in the day, a little bit of cloud starts to build, and this ahead of a weak disturbance attached to an area of low pressure that'll skirt along the international, or the territorial border rather, as we get overnight into Friday. That brings with it some flurry activity overnight into Friday morning through the Westman region, through central Manitoba into Thompson. For the Red River Valley, for Winnipeg, this is more like early morning flurries or a little bit of light snow first thing in the morning on Friday. Quite short-lived, but that chance of some flurries through the rest of Friday persists. Even into the evening hours, I think we do have a chance of seeing a couple of more snowflakes here in Winnipeg as we head into Saturday morning. Behind that, we do keep the cloud cover as we head through the weekend, but temperatures much warmer, and I'll show you how warm things are getting in your long-range forecast here. Really looking at nothing more than a dusting until we get to this time Friday, maybe a centimeter or two. A little bit of wind attached to that as well, but nothing like we have seen in the past couple of weeks. Behind that, though, our pattern really shifting quite considerably as we get into the weekend here. You can see the jet stream starting to make its way a little bit further north. We get caught on the warm side of that, which means that our temperatures go up as we get through into Monday and into Tuesday. However, the Hudson Bay coast still kind of stuck on the cold side of that for a couple of more days yet. Waking up to minus 25 in Winnipeg, closer to seasonal. Our seasonal low for this time of the year is minus 23 degrees. So still a little bit below seasonal. Daytime high below seasonal as well, minus 19 tomorrow. And then look, Brittany, minus 4 for Friday, minus 7s, minus 9s of the weekend. And temperatures get warmer than this as we get into next week. That is coming up in your 7-day.
All right, one more day.
Yes.
Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
We have much more to come after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Stay with us. Donald Trump's threat to impose tariffs on Canadian goods is spurring politicians here to come up with possible solutions. One of them includes looking to reduce trade barriers between provinces. Kate McKenna looks at what the leaders might do to protect Canadian consumers and businesses.
Ottawa and the provinces are dealing with a new reality.
The president likes to operate in an environment of chaos.
Chaos about when or if Donald Trump will hit Canadian goods with sweeping tariffs that could kill hundreds of thousands of Canadian jobs. The premiers met virtually today.
We had a really productive meeting with all the premiers and the prime minister and a couple federal ministers as well, making sure we have a solid plan.
Trump's now saying tariffs could come February 1st, after first saying it would happen when he took office.
We've been given a reprieve, whether that's a week or 6 weeks. So there is a time for cooler heads to prevail.
Today, their focus was bolstering Canada's economy and improving trade between provinces.
Why is it so hard to send a bottle of wine from one province to another?
We need to look at internal trade that could pick up the GDP by, I've heard numbers anywhere from $50 to $100 billion.
This is low-hanging fruit for us, relatively speaking. We do not have to go through the United States for us to attack these internal trade barriers.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is in Washington meeting with lawmakers. She split with her fellow premiers last week, coming out hard against using oil as a bargaining chip in a trade war. She attended today's virtual meeting after she posted online, saying the group is moving closer to a consensus on how to handle the U.S. tariff challenge. All premiers agree the best case scenario would be dissuading Donald Trump from implementing these tariffs in the first place. The premiers are planning a trip to Washington in mid-February to make their case to American lawmakers as a team. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
The federal government wants most provinces and territories to cut this year's allotted spaces for immigration programs for skilled workers by half. As Rafi Boudjikanian reports, it's triggering concerns about its impact on the labour force and the economy.
When it comes to Canada's permanent immigration targets and aligning them to our economic needs, I'm here to announce and confirm that the current plan reduces next year's projections.
That was the federal government last fall announcing cuts were coming. It's now becoming clearer what they will look like.
It's a 50% reduction from where we were last year's.
That's across the board for all provinces and territories except Quebec and Nunavut for what are called the provincial nominee programs, targeting skilled workers in healthcare, trades, food services, or even education. Cuts imposed unilaterally, the provinces charge with no consultation.
We know our labor market. We work with our employers on a regular basis. We're engaged with them.
In New Brunswick's case, the province says trades, health, and education alone require them to hire a couple of thousand new workers from the nominee program this year, more than 2/3 of their allocation.
If we want to build houses and apartments, we will need people with trades. This is our reality. And if we don't have them, what will be the impacts?
There's a further stipulation. Ottawa is requiring 3/4 of nominees this year to be people who are already in Canada waiting to become permanent residents. This expert says that further reduces options for Yukon or the Northwest Territories.
They don't have a large enough temporary resident population compared with other parts of Canada. And so this is where I feel the federal government could have been more considerate.
Provincial immigration departments say they're going to start consulting on what they can do to see if Ottawa can reverse at least some reductions. The federal immigration minister says he's willing to show flexibility, but he points out his office has reduced levels across all categories as part of the federal plan for the next 2 years. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Amazon Canada says it's closing all 7 of its warehouses in Quebec, a move that could result in the loss of more than 1,700 jobs. A company spokesperson says the online retailer will outsource deliveries to contractors, insisting the decision is tied to cost savings and not the recent unionization of about 200 employees at the Laval warehouse. The company has long been criticized for being anti-union. It's not clear exactly when Amazon plans to close the facilities, but a spokesperson told Radio Canada it would happen in the next 2 months. Some of Canada's most vulnerable people are facing a new hardship. A highly contagious drug-resistant bug, stomach bug, Shigella infections can be severe or even fatal, and it's getting harder to treat with antibiotics. CBC Health reporter Jennifer Yoon has more.
Night after night, Nurse Karen Altomare is confronted with suspected cases of a highly contagious illness known as Shigella.
We've been seeing a lot of people coming in complaining of diarrhea, severe fatigue, belly pain. People are embarrassed. They don't necessarily want to talk about it.
There's an outbreak in Toronto, at least 11 confirmed cases among people experiencing homelessness. But the city's public health officer thinks the number is much higher.
Most people will resolve the infection on their own. So we're really only capturing those who are seeking medical attention, going to the hospital to get tested, for instance.
The best prevention for the bacterial infection is through hygiene measures. But for those without a home, access to public toilets is an ongoing challenge. In Edmonton, sanitation measures have helped control cases. Since 2022, over 300 people have been hospitalized there with severe Shigella infections. Public health authorities were helping people find a place to take a shower, use the washroom, and get a change of clothes. But still, there's been an outbreak on and off for years.
As soon as you would get somebody to the right place, 3 more would pop up.
Antibiotics can help and were part of Edmonton's solution, supplied to people living in tents. But in other cities, the stomach bug is getting more resistant to pills.
And if they require antibiotics, they have to either go to the emergency department or go to the hospital to be able to receive IV antibiotics.
And even then, IVs don't work in all cases. Extensively, drug-resistant Shigella has been reported in Europe, Australia, and the US.
There's been cases of it in Seattle, and we occasionally see cases in Vancouver, but luckily it's not that well established.
The best way to prepare against Shigella goes back to prevention. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
Trump is calling on Russia to make a deal to end the war in Ukraine or face heavy tariffs and sanctions. His remarks come a month before the conflict enters its 4th year. It's left both sides exhausted. CBC's Briar Stewart visited Ukrainian soldiers in Russia's Kursk region and found many of them worried about how long they can hang on.
I'm about 15 kilometers from the Russian border in Ukraine's Sumy region, and behind me are a group of Ukrainian soldiers who've been fighting in Kursk for months. They now have a few days off from the front line, and they're here testing their weapons. Now, we spoke with a number of them, including foreign fighters that have volunteered to fight for Ukraine. They've all described a situation where they're completely exhausted. They say Ukraine is very short of manpower, very short of soldiers. It is a real issue. They talk about how some units on the front line have to abandon their positions because they just do not have enough people or enough equipment.
What a lot of people don't realize is the actual assaults and stuff, you know, the fear and stuff you're going through is not the biggest problem, but to see your friends dying around you the whole time, and it's the whole time. You know, like when you have 1 or 2 traumatic experiences, it's something else, but the whole time, it kind of gets to you.
Now, we know that Russia holds about 20% of Ukrainian territory, and when Ukraine made that incursion into Kursk in the summer, they had a bigger area. Now, that's not the case. Russia is continuing to claw back some of the territory with the help of thousands of North Korean soldiers. And there has been a lot of speculation about why Ukraine continues to try to defend the part of the Kursk region that they have. Ukrainian officials say it's because they want a buffer zone, but a lot of people talk about the fact that maybe what they're really trying to do is to keep holding the area so they have it for any future negotiations. Briar Stewart, CBC News in the Sumy region, Ukraine.
A 12-year-old chess prodigy has become the youngest Canadian to win an international master title. CBC's Tyreek Reed reports.
This is the move e4. I usually play this in most of my games. It's called the King's Pawn opening, and I really like it because it's really aggressive and I'm an aggressive player.
Aaron Mendez says it's one of his signature moves that helps him get the advantage over his opponents. It's just one reason why he's now Canada's youngest international master.
I felt really happy, and all the congrats I got from my family really helped.
The 12-year-old won the title last month at the 2024 North American Youth Chess Championship. It's the third time he's competed in the tournament and the first time he's been able to bring home the trophy, adding it to a growing collection he's been amassing since he was 5. And while he might make it look easy, he says it takes a lot of work.
I usually have to spend about 3 hours a day into preparing, since it's really hard to know what your opponent's going to play. So I just try to revise my own opening lines rather than focusing on what they're going to do, but it's equally important too.
All the hard work has paid off. Mendes now competes in tournaments around the world. He also captains his school's chess team, making this young master a teacher.
The pawns on the first move can move twice.
And of course, a winner.
Checkmate.
And though he's faced some losses along the way, he says his family has always been there to pick him back up.
We are very excited and happy for him. And IM title is what his dream was. We have made space for the trophies now for him, so we expect to get more.
My family always supported me, win or loss, and that's really good since losing is learning, so they really supported me.
And he's not done learning yet, sharing these words of wisdom.
For all the young kids who want to play chess, remember success does not come early. You always need to practice, because practice makes perfect.
He says his next goal is to become a world champion. Terry Greed, CBC News, Mississauga.
As a second Trump administration settles into the White House, the president's policy plans are starting to take effect. Some the parents on this side of the border are feeling anxious about. Coming up, how you can talk to your kids about all of that. Stay with us. Riley's in now. Riley, we've seen other parts of Canada call things extreme cold when us here in Manitoba wouldn't consider it extreme cold, but there are parts of North America that are dealing with this kind of deep winter like we are.
Yeah. I want to show you some video first off. This is New Orleans that I'm going to show you here. A rare and major winter storm slammed the southern United States. You might recall I showed some of the forecasting for this last night, but New Orleans, for example, getting 24 centimeters of snow. Along with that, people dealing with ice and freezing temperatures as well. We've seen temperatures dipping below zero, which is quite rare for this part of the United States. And I mentioned last night some of the blizzard warnings that were in effect there, some of the winter storm warnings. So this really packed a punch as it made its way across the southern United States along the Gulf Coast and somewhat up the seaboard of the United States into the area through the Atlanta and into the Carolinas. Behind that, some extreme cold warnings now along the Gulf Coast. Some of that has started to lift into parts of Ontario and Quebec, but still feeling the chill in eastern parts of the country here in Canada as well. Pinky, I think, is longing for a good walk outside when it's not really, really cold outside. Thank you, Val, for sending this picture. And you can send yours to talkback@cbc.ca. And Pinky, I think you'll get out for a walk by the end of the week, because we are looking at a cold start again tomorrow, albeit somewhat seasonal for this time of the year. Minus 25 in Winnipeg first thing. Our winds backing off overnight to west 10 by the morning. Could see some gusts up to 30 through the afternoon hours tomorrow. Minus 19 your afternoon temperature, and we continue to rise from there up to minus 16 by the time we get to the evening. And that rise in temperatures continues as we get into Friday and into the weekend as well. So overnight tonight, minus 22 for both Brandon and Dauphin, minus 18 in Verdun, Winnipeg minus 26 overnight, and also minus 26s into northwestern Ontario. A bit warmer in this western edge of the province, where we'll start to see a bit of cloud building in. Minus 19 through Flin Flon and the Pas, minus 24 in Thompson tonight. Shamattawa looking at minus 27 again with some cold wind chills first thing in the morning. A little bit of cloud up the western side of the province, but it's not until we get into the afternoon hours that we'll start to see a little bit more substantial cloud cover starting to build in, and even a little bit of snow by the time we get into the late afternoon for places like Lynn Lake into Leaf Rapids by the afternoon hours tomorrow. In the south, looking at temperatures starting around minus 20 for places like Dauphin and Brandon. By the time we get to the lunchtime, though, we are back into the bright sunshine. Minus 13 in Verdun by lunchtime, minus 14s through Brandon, Melita, minus 19s into the northwestern part of Ontario as well. And we really stay somewhat below seasonal through the Red River Valley into northwestern Ontario. But Brittany, we end quite seasonal tomorrow. I'll have your 7-day forecast when I come back.
Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
U.S. President Donald Trump has been announcing sweeping actions just days into taking office. From ordering the closure of all federal diversity, equity, and inclusion offices to giving enforcement agents wider powers to carry out his pledge to deport millions of undocumented migrants. CBC's Chris Reyes reports.
President Trump has expanded the powers of Immigration and Customs Enforcement Officers, or ICE. The new policy was announced by the Department of Homeland Security Tuesday and took effect immediately. It allows for expedited removal after arrest if an illegal immigrant can't prove that they've been in the country longer than 2 years. It also means that ICE can bypass court proceedings. Tom Homan, Trump's so-called border czar, was asked about raids, where and when they would happen. Here's what he said.
I wouldn't call them raids or target enforcement operations. They know exactly who they're looking for. They know pretty much where they'll find them. So again, these are well-planned operations. They're well investigated.
There are some 250 sanctuary cities and states in the United States where local policies either limit cooperation with ICE officers or prohibit asking about a person's immigration status altogether. Many of these cities, like Chicago and New York, are led by Democrats, and they are gearing up for a fight. Now, in another sweeping action, the Trump administration has ended all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. All federal employees in DEI roles are to be placed on paid leave by tonight. Trump is also putting federal agencies on deadline to come up with a plan for firing those employees by the end of the month. The head of the U.S. Coast Guard has also been dismissed. She was the first woman to hold that position. One Democratic senator said she was put into that role for good reason.
Literally, issues of sexual assault and sexual harassment at the Coast Guard Academy and at sea and people covered it up. You're going to fire her over the fact that she wanted to clean up a mess created on a previous watch? It's the wrong decision.
All DEI-related offices will shut down, and any mention of such programs will be removed from all federal websites and social media. This essentially undoes many of Trump's predecessors' initiatives to promote inclusion within the government and to address what President Biden called historical injustices. Chris Reyes, CBC News, Washington.
Now, Trump's orders are upsetting for some people, and navigating conversations around these issues, especially with your kids, can be challenging. Dr. Joanne Unger is a clinical psychologist. She shared some tips with Marcy Marcusa.
I encourage caregivers when they're talking to kids is they're making sure they're taking care of themselves. So finding space to talk about how they're doing, how they're feeling, what their thoughts are, and getting that support so that when they have those conversations with children in their lives and teens in their lives, that they're able to be regulated, that they're able to kind of prioritize where the kid or teen is at with this information, and so that they can co-regulate them and that they can be support to them and help them and listen to them and help them work through the thoughts and feelings they might be having.
You mentioned thoughts and feelings. So one of the methods you say is to be, you can be problem focused or you can be emotion focused. What do you mean by those things?
Yeah. So some of these, even thinking about the theme that you have coming up, right? So there can be these trickle over effects of things that happen around the world and with our closest neighbor. We can see some of those affecting our day-to-day lives. And so when those things affect our day-to-day lives, when kids are experiencing things at school, maybe they're hearing messages from other people that are unkind or unwelcoming or harmful, we can look at what can we do about those things that are happening in our day-to-day lives. So that's problem focused. And so then we use the adults in our lives to kind of think about, okay, what are the steps that we can take? What are the potential solutions that we can have? And what can we do about those things? When there's things in our lives that are beyond our control, like a president making orders in another country, we don't have control over what happens there. We can't necessarily change any of those pieces. And then we need to take care of our emotions, our reactions that we might be having to those different orders and how they potentially could impact us in the future so that we can continue to function in a good and helpful way, and we can have some comfort and some healing to some of those difficult feelings.
When I was a kid, there were anxieties in some of my family members about things like war, World War, like things like that were topical for some people that were in my family. And there was always discussion around what is reality, what could happen, what may not happen. And they're very challenging. So in a time when everything's shifting, do you lean into the news, or do you say, do you take a news break from some of these things, or is it better for, or are you shielding your family members, whether they're children or teens? Are you shielding them from that too much?
Yeah, I think it depends on the age and depends on our own self and our own nervous system and our history. So absolutely, I think taking news breaks and stepping out can be helpful. It's good to stay informed so that, if things do affect us in the future, we're not completely surprised by them if they have impact to us in our homes, wherever we may be. But to be inundated or solely focused on that can increase our sense of risk and can increase our sense of anxiety. So anxiety is emotion that is designed to help us anticipate and prepare for potential threats in the future. It's adaptive in that way. It wants us to take action when there might be a threat. Now, sometimes it overestimates that risk and that threat, and it leaves our nervous system charged and acting as if the threat were happening now when it's not. So we kind of have to navigate how realistic a threat is for our day-to-day. It's helpful to be prepared for the future, but if there's nothing we can do about it right now, then tapping in, being aware, and tapping out can be a very useful strategy.
When doing something like fact checking, because also some of this will be what's happening and what's actually not truthful, how should parents approach that kind of a conversation?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because there's a lot of information, opinions, and all sorts of various things that we can watch, listen, and take in. And they will have a variety of sources. And so I often suggest, particularly with older teens, that parents and caregivers take a curious approach. So when a teen or child comes to you with a certain piece of information and you're not sure where they've got it from, I often start with a stance of curiosity, asking them to tell me more about that and where they heard that and where that might be from. And then rather than getting into a debate mode, kind of go, I'm curious about that source. How about we go look that up together? Let's go see where you saw that and what some other information, if you know that you have some credible sources to provide some counter information.
Still ahead, an extra small entertainment venue, how a miniature movie theater is generating a big buzz in Vancouver. Plus, Riley's back with our 7-day forecast. Stay with us.
All right, I think it's been a while since I've showed you how our snowpack's doing, so I thought I'd give you a look at that first. Pretty healthy across the western part of the province. On the ground, about 6 to 12 centimeters really across much of southern Manitoba, save for that extreme south-central part where we do have a little bit more snow. What's interesting, though, is after that blizzard moved through parts of the U.S. Gulf Coast that I was talking about yesterday, we actually have some measurable snow on the ground up the eastern seaboard. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Thought I'd give you a look at that. Okay, your 7-day forecast: -19 for Thursday, up to -4 for Friday, -7 for Sunday, -6 for Monday. A little bit of a breeze. We start to get a little bit more sun back as we get into next week. But look at these temperatures, quite a ways above seasonal for this time of the year. -1 for next Tuesday and -3 for Wednesday. Well, people walking in Vancouver's east side may have walked by it without even noticing. An extra small, little itty-bitty entertainment venue.
A miniature movie theater that's generating big buzz in the art community. Morris Katz has tonight's Daily Lift.
You've heard of the big screen, but what about the small screen? Like, really small. You push the button, peek through the hole, and it plays a snippet of a movie.
Good day. Hi. May I see your license and registration, please?
It's hidden around the corner of the Vancouver Hack Space in East Vancouver. Janet Mader and David Bino designed the incredibly intricate miniature theater. It's based off of one that used to exist nearby.
We did some research and found the Vancouver Pantages was built in 1908, and it was, until it got knocked down, the oldest surviving vaudeville theater in Canada.
They also decide what's playing.
We do take requests. Sometimes our ideas will come from, we're just watching old things, and like ideas will present themselves. Sometimes we'll respond to, holidays or, current events.
Good evening. Edwin S. Simon report.
The theater first opened in December last year, and they say they're still figuring out what exactly their role is in the neighborhood. But one thing's for sure, you'll be tempted to take a peek at what's playing, if you know where to look. Maurice Katz, CBC News, Vancouver.
That is very cool.
And very detailed.
Right?
See the little figurines that they have kind of set
I don't even think I can paint that small or do those details.
Cover one eye to see in there.
Very cool work being done by some interesting artists.
Yes.
Have a wonderful night. Stay warm, stay safe. We'll see you back here tomorrow.